Hi everyone. I Some of you guys may be new, maybe the first time you're actually meeting me. For some of you, this will probably be the fourth
Start.
hour we're spending
Together.
together. So to kind of just give you guys a quick synopsis of who I am, I'm Manny Marsh. I am a guy in tech, and I'm also a guy in music. I've been in music for a year and been in tech for maybe 10 years of my life. Um, and today I want to kind of walk you through how to come up with ideas with your team and kind of give you some tips to figure out how to take your ideas and turn them into a great either video or a great creative project. So let me just share my screen a little bit. I'll start by introducing you to my music side by just like jumping to my Instagram. So this is how I am 80% of the self, 80% of the time, very nerdy. I am a geek. I went to UTech. I studied computer science and I work for a tech company where we test software. It is run by a female CEO. So my boss is a woman and I'm very happy to work with her. And we are one of the top tech companies, service companies right now in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, and doing good work in LA. When I'm not doing that, I am focusing on my music. So I do have a whole creative space where I create videos and I work with other creatives and we make art. Let me know if my background is low. Can you hear my background? No? Okay.
I mean, it's not that loud, Money.
Okay, all right, good. Right, so where I create music and I work with people to just create interesting content. I'll show you an example of that and kind of walk you through the steps. So essentially what today will be is a summary of our last conversation. And it's really to show you how to move from just a sentence about what it is that you want to do, to some sketches about what it is that you're trying to do. Eventually, maybe a quick phone recording video. So I'll share this video. This is a video that I did as a prototype of what I was trying to accomplish, almost like a vision of what I was trying to accomplish. And then I'll show you the end product and then we'll work backwards. So before I show this to you, just to give you some more context again, for those who are new, a year ago, I decided that I wanted to do music because I think I can make good music. And starting this year, a year later, or middle last year rather, I realized that not a lot of people knew who I was as an artist, since I was so new in the business. So I decided to create a visual product that would get people to.
No, don't mute the music, Manine. You gotta play.
I'll play it. I'll play it. I'll play it. But I just like giving some context to say that. Yeah. So last year, a lot of people didn't know who I was. I had less than 1,000 followers on Instagram, and so I decided to put together a video that would introduce myself to people at a very tight budget. And my goal was to get to over 1,000 followers on Instagram by January, and to get endorsed, get recognized by different people in the industry. So what we did was my friends and I, because of my tech background, we use design thinking and lead methodologies to come up with a way to work together on our ideas to create our end results. And it started in different phases where we would write sentences about what it is that we were trying to accomplish. Then we sketched what it is that we wanted, and we created a prototype on our phone and another camera, and then we did the final product. And I'm going to show you how that moved from stage to stage. So starting with the sketches. So the sketches, so these steps are what I'm going to kind of walk you through to get to our first prototype or our first milestone, which is the sketches. So as you are here and you're all kind of coming up with your ideas and trying to think about, okay, I want to enter this hackathon. How do I become successful? The first thing I'd like you to kind of think about is a concept called design thinking. And I'd say as we go through this, I'll ask you to make notes and do some research. But I will pretty much give you the high level information as to what this is. But it's always good to research on your own, because design thinking is something that you can use to help plan any other project, including the one that you're doing for this hackathon. The idea around design thinking really is to be able to break down any big idea you have and use different steps so that you can create something that somebody will want to use, somebody will want to watch, right? Almost getting you to think on behalf of whoever it is that you want, whoever it is that you're expecting to watch your video or watch your project. Because even though you're creating something for a project or for this hackathon, the end goal, or at least our objective here, is that you can walk away with a mindset that will help you. Yeah.
Manine?
Yeah.
Yes, Nicole.
Yes, Nicole?
Yes, Nicole, we're all seeing. I think the connection is yours. I think you're having a bad connection. No, Manine is not sharing something yet. His screen,
Nicole.
Your connection is not. Your connection is poor,
So
Nicole.
a couple of people are saying they're not seeing the slide.
He wasn't sharing a screen. He just had his screen up. He's sharing now.
Okay, yeah, getting responses now. It looks like people are seeing now. Cool.
Manine, you're muted, boy.
Are we all good now? No technical issues? Can see my screen and you can hear me?
Good to go, bro.
All right, cool. So yeah, so as I was saying, ideally what we want to do is to walk you through the design thinking process and show you how to apply that to your project. And maybe you can apply that through life, right? The design thinking project process asks you to break down any big idea that you have into 4 steps, right? So you're here, you have a hackathon, you're trying to break it down. The first thing to do is to break it down into 4 steps: research, ideation, prototyping, and testing. And you will do these steps several times as you go through your process. And at the end of your step, you will have small versions of your big idea. In my case, my small versions were, and I'll kind of show them again. I wasn't showing my screen before. My small versions were a sentence, some sketches, rough video, and then the final product. And because of those 4 stages, I was able to create small versions of my idea that kept building on itself. And that's kind of what I'm going to walk you through today. How do you do that for your project so that you can create small versions of your idea so you can finally get to your final product? So starting with the first step, which is research. That starts with just strategy and deciding on what is my approach to what is my approach to coming up with my idea, to executing and accomplishing whatever my goal is? Research in this context, when we say research, is really just understanding your audience, understanding who is it that you're trying to create your video for, or your product for, or your idea for. What are you trying to accomplish? And it also asks you to make some notes with your team about what it is that you know about that audience. And I will show you different things in terms of what are some of the things that you've been looking for, or what are the things that you've been researching. But on a high level, you're really just trying to empathize and understand with the audience that you're building your product for. Now, to do that, it will require your team, you and your team, to sit down and really just strategize on 4 additional things. I'll start with the first one, which is the team and the hackathon needs. So the first thing you need to think about when you're coming up with your strategy, when you're coming up with your process, coming up with your idea as you're going through this hackathon, is really, what does the hackathon need? Like, what are they asking for? Just make sure that you really clearly understand what are the rules of the hackathon, what are the content, what are the context, the conditions, reread everything. Just make sure that you really understand what does the hackathon need. Also talk to your team though, and ask your team members, why are they participating? What are they trying to accomplish? What are they trying to get out of this hackathon? And feel free for you guys to, I know you won't be able to be in the same room, but you will be in, you will have sessions like this with yourself. It's very important that the first thing you all do is just make sure that you're all on the same page. You all are aware of what each other wants, and you're all aware of what the hackathon is asking for. Is that clear? And I'll be checking in with you periodically. And you can always use a thumbs up or a text in the chat to say which is best.
So there's a little update with Zoom. So you'll find all those reactions, all those thumbs up and yes and stuff in the reactions bar, in the bar below at the bottom. So you go across the reactions, all of it has been moved to there.
Reactions.
Yeah.
Participants.
So there's a yes, there's the no, there's move faster, all those things have been moved, and raise hand has been moved to the reactions tab on the column at the bottom.
Looks like I need to update my Zoom.
You got an updated, yeah, so that was
all right. Kevin, you'll be my eyes and ears on the reactions tab.
Hey, man.
All right. So everybody's good? Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, I'm seeing it. Okay. All right. Good. So again, day 1, you're meeting with the team for the first time. The first thing you want to do with your team is make sure that you understand what the hackathon is asking for, and you understand what your teammate is looking for, right? Once you've done that and you guys are all comfortable, you guys are all excited, you're like, yes, we know what we want to do, we know why we want to do it. You want to then think about, what does your audience need? So who is it that you are targeting, right? And once you all can think about that, and you might end up thinking about different people at first, which is fine, but have that conversation with yourself, have that conversation with your team as well. It's like, we know why we're entering this hackathon, we know what we're trying to accomplish. The next thing is really, what is my audience? Who's my audience? Who do I want to watch my video, right? And once you and your team understand that, then you can start getting into ideating and prototyping and testing, which we'll talk about later. But before you might have a lot of ideas right now, but before you even start getting into your ideas, just make sure that you know exactly what the hackathon is asking for, and know who is it that you would want to target for your product, for your idea as you enter this competition. So your strategy session, again, is to cover and make sure that you and your team is aligned so that you can get into your next aspects. So I did mention, make sure that you understand the hackathon and the needs of the hackathon. And I also mentioned, make sure that you understand what your team wants. But sometimes what I'll do is I'll kind of give you a framework in order to document what your team is trying to accomplish, right? And what that really means is, as a team, you will have to come up with your goal. So you see the hackathon, you enter the hackathon. You and your team members will need to understand, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? Outside of just winning the hackathon, it's really about, okay, we're coming together to solve a problem for a particular pain point. If it's saving the ocean, what do we consider a success in the aspect of saving the ocean, right? And this is really helping you and your team define the impact that your idea will have. What am I trying to accomplish? How do I want to be impactful? Because when you create content, it's not just to create content that looks good or is entertaining, it's really to create content that has a certain impact. And it helps when you and your team members can decide on the impact up front and aim for that. And everything you do will be connected to driving that impact. Some examples could be, maybe you want to get people to donate money to a particular charity. Or maybe you want to organize a beach cleanup with 30 people. Or you want to reach 5,000 people on YouTube and get those people to do something. Essentially, the point of it all is that you should be able to not just do this hackathon to win the hackathon, but should incorporate in your planning what it is that you're trying to accomplish. What is your team goal? All right, so that's defining your team objectives, and that is making sure that you and your team is aligned. So some of you guys would already be familiar with what we call a vision statement from our last couple of sessions. But the vision statement, for those who do not know, is a sentence that allows you to define and explain and express what your idea is about, right? So once you and your team would have decided on what you're trying to accomplish, and you've decided what it is that you're, you understand the hackathon and you decide what your goal is, the next step for you is to really decide how to communicate it to other people, right? And communicating it to other people is going to be super important, especially in the real world, when you're trying to express an idea to a friend or somebody who you want to join and help you with your idea. It's very critical that you're able to communicate it, right? And one tool that I use to communicate ideas is what we call a vision statement. And it's really, as it says, you stating what your vision is for this product, right? How that's done is I have these little categories that you can write down and fill in with information from your own idea. This is an example. The first part of the vision statement is to understand, as said before, who is it for? And you and your team would have had different ideas around who you want to make your product for. In this case, an example is that you could be creating something for parents, right? The next thing that in the vision statement is, once you identify who it is that you're creating your product for, your idea is for, you want to understand what do parents want in this context, right? In this case, I've said, I'm creating an idea for parents who want their children to eat healthy food. This would have been an example that I used from our last session. If there are people here who are completely lost right now, you can put like maybe a thumbs down into the chat if you are lost about what we're talking about and about what I'm saying. And I will use it as an indication to kind of take a step back and give a lot more context. But if you're good, a thumbs up is fine. I'll look just make sure, because I don't want to take it for granted. Yeah.
2 thumbs up, 4, 5.
All right. All right, cool, good. All right, so I can keep the pace. So yeah, so
getting a few thumbs up.
great. All right, so putting it back to what's on the screen, where we are is your vision statement, right? So for parents who want their children to eat healthy food, right? That is the reason why you want a for and a who want is when you're coming up with your idea, a tip to defining your audience is to also define what motivates them. What are they trying to accomplish, right? So it's for parents who want their children to eat healthy food. The third line here, which is my product is it's important that you can decide amongst you and your team what it is that you want to make categorically. Is it a music video? Is it an explainer video? Is it an infomercial? Is it a TV show, right? When you're coming up with your idea and you're going through you and your team with your strategy session, you want to sit down and decide exactly what category am I going to be making? What category of thing am I creating? And write that down, right? Once you understand, once you've decided on you've written down ideas on who is it for and what you think those people want and ideas around the category, the next thing is really thinking about what is the value of whatever it is that I'm creating. What is my value proposition? And in this case, the value is written out as a key benefit. In this fictitious idea that I have here, the key benefit for this music video is that it's supposed to break down how plants are impacted. And for clarity, I'll say climate change to keep it contextual, right? To break down how plants are impacted by climate change. And the reason why I have this sentence here is because when you're coming up with your idea, even if it's a music video, even if it's an infomercial, even if it's something on a website, you really all have to decide what is the one thing that we're trying to accomplish? What is the one thing that we want people to take away, right? And in this case, is just really want to help parents to understand how plants are impacted by climate change. So for you, when you're coming up with your value, sit down with you and your team are still on day one. The benefit will be the thing that you will use to guide and make sure that everything that you do is accomplishing this one thing. Another key thing here, we have another thing here. Let me do one thing. I said key benefit. I'll change this to just to not confuse you. So I did say that the benefit is the value proposition, but just not to confuse you. Like the key thing, the key benefit is the value proposition, right? What it is that you're offering to your parents, right? When you do that, you also want to make a note of, so this is what you're trying to accomplish, but what will be beneficial to the parents? Like how will they earn? What will be in it for them? And then what you can do with your team is just to decide what are some of the things that you want to add to your video, or your product, to make people engaged or to drive people's interest into whatever you're creating. In some cases, if you guys are funny, then maybe the benefit is that your thing will be hilarious, right? And that's what you're trying to do. If it's in addition to it being funny, it could be a case where it's fun for the parents and it will also let children know how they can help, or you're trying to get parents to know how they can take action. You're trying to inform people how they can donate, how they can do things in their homes to help plants. it's really up to you and the team. But the core goal for you is to always just know, be able to finish these categories, right? Answer, who is it for? What do they want? What will my product be categorically? What is my core value? And what is the benefit to the audience, right? Is that clear? And then that summarizes the vision statement. So if we're taking our step back, let's see some thumbs. We started out with meeting in our strategy session. And we know what the hackathon wants. We decided that our audience is parents. And we have decided on our goal, what we want to accomplish at the end of this. What are we trying to add to the world? And we've written out a vision statement as a way to communicate it to other people, right? And that's your first milestone, being able to communicate it to people. So taking a pause, taking a breather right now. So when I was creating my music video, or my video, I had to go through the same process. And when I was going through the same process, my vision statement was that I wanted to create something for people who loved reggae music, who wanted more entertaining content. And the reason why I said who wanted more entertaining content is because at the time when I was listening to reggae, it was a lot of burning down Babylon system, or a lot of fire burn on this, fire burn on that, which I don't really relate to. I wanted to create something that was more relevant to me and people my age, you know. And so I talk a lot about my engagements, I talk a lot about relationships and drama and toxicity. That's because a lot of people related to that type of music, but I still wanted it to be reggae. At the time, categorically, my product, I couldn't afford a music video because I was just poor. And so I decided I wanted to do an independent film. And knowing that I wanted to do an independent film guided how I looked around and find inspiration from the world. And I'll explain that. And the value proposition, one second. Yeah, the value proposition for the video that I wanted to do was to introduce people to an entertaining story about a rude boy, coupled with great music. And the benefit was that they'd be able to appreciate music, as well as help me reach my goals, or help spread my brand to a larger audience. So for you and your team, it'd be good if you can sit down and practice. Sometimes if it's multiple people on a project, we all might take our own independent stabs at our ideas. So we might write these down independently. So we all might think we want to do something for a particular group. We all might think we want to do a music video, or one person might want to do an infographic, but it's good if you all can independently write down your vision statement and present it to the team, and then you and your team can really decide on how you want to merge and vote on what vision statement will represent the team. But once you have a vision statement, you would have been able to at least communicate your product to the judges and communicate it to yourself, to your team members, and clearly define what it is that you want to do. So this part of the conversation, when it comes to defining your audience, it does help. I'm framing this as a tip. It's something that will help you define your vision even further. Once you know who your audience is, so initially we had parents, but if it is that you don't know, or you don't know how to define your audience, I will introduce you to something that can help you define your audience. So if it is that you already know, I'm doing this for parents who want their children to eat healthy food. If you already know that, then the rest of this is not relevant to you. But if it is that you're still struggling with, okay, I don't know even who it is that I'm making this for, then this is something that I will introduce you to, which is called a user archetype or a persona archetype. Take a note of what this is, and you can always find some Google or YouTube videos. But whenever anyone is marketing anything or creating anything for somebody, they often create what would be like a profile of that person. And that profile can be very detailed, right? It can have like a photo of what you think the person looks like, their age, their occupation, their status, where they live, their motivations, personality trait, a lot of things. But for the purpose of this hackathon, your thing can look like this, right? It doesn't have to be so sophisticated. The key things that you would want to know about your audience is, okay, if you were to give them a name and a category, what would that be? So in this case, my stickman is called Tim the Father. And that helps you understand who it is that you think you want your thing to, your product to be addressing. This person is clearly a parent, as said before, but more specifically, you're thinking about, you want fathers to be watching this, right? This is probably a young father, age 25. You want to know their age. You want to kind of have an idea of how old your audience is. So the people that you want to watch it, you're kind of thinking about how old they are. And the audience can be your friends, right? It could be Kimmy, the high schooler. It could be Kimmy, the prefect, right? And she could be 15, 14. She could be within that age group. You want to know what their location is, and you want to kind of decide on, okay, if this is people living in Kingston. And the reason why it's important to know the location is because you know that your video is not going to be in Spanish, right? Because they live in Kingston. You know that your video might not use any, I would say, like, your content will be relevant to a 25-year-old or versus a 14-year-old, right? And so you want to define your audience and note these key things about them, so that when you're creating your video, you use this as a way to say, okay, what would be attractive to Tim the Father, who is 25 years old and lives in Kingston, right? Some additional things that can help you as you're thinking about your idea and your product is, okay, what are the goals of Tim the Father? What do you think they are? And you and your team can come up with several goals and then choose a top 3. Some examples are provide for his family, keep his wife happy, and raise a strong daughter, right? There are some of the goals of Tim the Father. You and your team can come up with goals of your audience, so that when you are coming up with your video, you know exactly, or your product, you know exactly what it is or why they would be interested in your idea or your content, right? And you're using this as a guide to say, okay, this is relevant to this audience because this is what I know about this audience, right? And the final thing is, really, given the fact that your video will have to exist somewhere, you want to put your product in spaces that your audience is familiar with. And that's where the last piece, technology, becomes relevant. So Tim the Father is familiar with YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. If Tim was a high schooler, he'd probably be familiar with TikTok, right? Or if he was not even a high schooler, but he'd probably be familiar with TikTok. And so if you know what technology your audience is familiar with, then you will be able to know where to put your video or where to put your content. And so these are just a high-level tip on how to define your audience if you're currently struggling, like you're not really sure on how to define your own audience. Is that clear? Thumbs up if you guys are still following.
Yep, we're getting them.
Yep. All right. Cool. So just a quick, there's a quick pullback on how we started. For you on the team, when you're starting your idea and you're coming up with your strategy, you want to get an idea of, make sure that you all understand what what the hackathon is asking for. The next thing you want to do, once you know what the hackathon is asking for and you understand the rules, you and your team needs to decide on what is your goal. What are you trying to accomplish with this video? What are you trying to accomplish by enter, right? And some examples of those goals were, maybe you want to get people to donate to charity. Maybe you want to organize a beach cleanup. You want to do something. You're doing something for some outcome. You and your team decide on what that outcome is and align on that. Once you can do that and you're ready to move on, before you start ideating, you want to get an idea of who it is that you're creating something for. So you might have an idea in your head, but before you even start working on that idea, you really need to understand your audience. Decide and define your audience and understand why they would need you. And a way to do that is to create a user archetype, which is this that I just showed you. You can define, it doesn't have to be this complex, it can just be this simple. The person has a name, they have an age, they live somewhere, these are their top 3 goals, and these are the technologies that they're used to. Once you understand those first 2 things, now you're ready to collaborate and ideate, right? And come up with a prototype and test. Is that clear? I check in so many times because I can't see your faces, so I can't see if you guys are falling asleep.
Yes,
so
sir.
these comments really help.
Yep. Keep going.
All right. So once you have decided on your idea and once you've decided on your audience and you know what it is that you're trying to accomplish, you may want to start ideating with your team. And ideation can come in several forms. In my case, at the end of our session, our idea ended up being a couple sketches that became what we called a storyboard. And then that sketch resulted in a prototype video. I want to pause and ask how much time do I have left, because given the timeline, we do have a follow-up session here, and this would be a good point to pause if time is coming to end and restart tomorrow.
That's great, Manine. That's fine. It's now 7:17. So I don't know if you want to just give a little bit of a wrap up.
Okay.
And then we can continue into part 3 tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
So for today's session, we would have gone through in your 4-phase strategy session, as you try to come up with what's the best way to approach this hackathon. You would have learned the steps to do the first 2, which is getting aligned and understanding the needs of the project and coming up with your vision statement once you understand what your audience needs, right? So once you have that and you've gotten to this point, which is your vision statement, you are ready to start ideating and prototyping. And tomorrow's session, I'll focus on showing you how we ideate and prototype to get to demoing your product. What I'll wrap up with is, for those of us, it is just a quick format for presenting your idea. For those of us who are doing something that has a story, you may want to introduce a single sentence that captures the essence of your story to the judges or to the audience, right? So yes, you may have your vision as to why you're doing it, but if it is that you're doing a story, then you may want to find a way to grab your audience's attention and encourage them to pay attention to your story. And one thing that people use to do that is called a log line. And a log line is something that's in the film industry. It's really a pitch. This is my story. And again, it's there to just grab the person's attention and encourage them to follow up with what you're doing and listen to your idea. All right. So An example of a log line is Lion King. So Lion Cub and future King Simba searches for his identity. His eagerness to please others and penchant for testing his boundaries sometimes gets him into trouble. So if you notice, it's really just a summary, right? It's not even you saying, and then somebody jumping on car and then they're gonna swerve. It's not even that. Like, you don't necessarily need to get into that. You're really just thinking about what is the big overall essence of the story, right? And this was the pitch for Lion King. The components of the log line is that you must have an intriguing character. So maybe a bat who can see, or a man in a suit, just or a dorky high schooler, just something intriguing about the character, right? In some compelling situation, so gets bitten by a spider, if you guys watch Spider-Man, right? And the third part of the third component is that you must be able to imply that the story is dramatic in some way, right? So must choose between saving himself and saving his family, for example, Spider-Man. So when you're thinking about your logline and how you want to pitch the story part of your video, it's good to use this format. And here's a quick formula. If you want to figure out, okay, you don't want to make up one, you can use this formula to come up with your own logline, which is how you tell the essence of your story. So it's like when something happens, your main character or your intriguing character must do something or else this will happen, right? And you can screenshot this or write this down. But on top of having a vision, if it is that your video or your content is story-based, it's not just like information. If it's story-based and you want to figure out how do I communicate the story, a logline is a good way to do that. And then you can put it all together when you're presenting on the day where you have an introduction. You will start with your logline to say, hey, today's story is about this person who is in this situation and is trying to prevent this from happening. And you can then show a demo of what it looks like. You will then show the team who is building it. And then you can end with your vision statement. I'm doing this for this audience who are for parents who for parents who wants their children to eat healthily. This video is going to let them see the impact of plants on the impact that climate change have on plants. It will be fun and also let them know how they can take action. And that's a good summary in terms of how to pitch and present and communicate your idea. And I think that's a good place to pause right now before we get into walking through how do we ideate. The first step is how do you communicate? And these are some ideas and some tips to communicate your idea to the judges and communicate ideas in general.
Wonderful, Maneen. So we go from communicating to ideating. And I think that's a fantastic tagline. So we communicate and then we ideate. And right now we're at the communicate stage. So Maneen has given you guys some really excellent guidance on how to come up with that initial concept that you're going to be pitching to the judges, how to be succinct and to really hit the most important points so that the judges can know exactly what your concept is about. And then in the next session, and Kev, you want to put up the poster so the girls will know, in the next session, we're going to talk more about the ideation piece, which is actually going to be the elements of what you will present to the judges. Am I right, Maneen?
Yes.
Excellent. So just so everyone knows, Maneen is back tomorrow night to finish up this session, right? So tomorrow it's going to be like the final piece of the puzzle. And by the time you are finished, you will have a very good roadmap on what you need to present to the judges in this first round. Okay? Remember, we're not prototyping yet. Prototyping comes in round 2, so you don't have to get flustered. You don't have to get nervous, because we're not asking you to come up with an actual animation or an actual docudrama or an actual film. None of that. What we're asking you to do is to come up with a winning concept, a story that the judges will want to see how that story translates into whatever it is that you choose as your modality.
Yeah, I do see a question here. Should I answer it?
We can definitely take questions now.